Right, so episode 3 of It Welcome to Derry, entitled Now You See It, has just dropped. So far my overall thoughts on the series, I'm enjoying it. It's quite enjoyable. It's a bit of a slow burn, and I think also just seeing these different worlds of, we've got the adult stuff going on the air base, the army base, but then also we've got the kid stuff as well, but sometimes can be a little bit, are you afraid of the dark, a little bit goosebumps, and when it comes to episode 3, I really saw that. It was sort of front and center, and you can definitely see the TV budget, which necessarily isn't a deal breaker, but there are times where it's a bit of a distraction, and it comes off as a bit, I wouldn't say goofy, but also just, little hints of cheesiness. But I think the standout for me with this episode is seeing more of the backstory of Dick Hallorann and seeing more of his quote-unquote abilities being showcased, and him essentially, I wouldn't say being weaponized, but used to the advantage of it can help the army find certain things and certain dig sites where something happened back in 1908. And then that furthers the quest to eventually find what is going on under the soil and somewhat use that as a weapon, as almost a mind control device. And I remember when that plot point happened in episode 2, I was a little bit taken aback. I'm like, ooh, that's an interesting way to look at it. That's an interesting way to approach the entity that takes on the form of Pennywise and many other forms. But like I said, you've got all this stuff going on with Dick and Leroy, and Leroy's accompanied by his friend Paulie to escort Dick on a plane to try and find this dig site. And Dick starts having these hallucinations, and the fellas are trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. They don't know his abilities. They were just told, get him in the plane, and if he tells you to go east, you fucking go east. And this kind of links things with Rose and the dig site and them not wanting to dig up unnamed graves and graves of ancestors. And then much to the chagrin of General Shaw as well, wanting to intervene and say, hey, look, we can help each other out. We obviously want to dig on your site, but you can help us in terms of where certain graves are, and we can just somehow work around it. But he's just covering it as, it's soil study, and her having no idea that this is about uncovering some sort of entity and weaponizing it. And then we got Ronnie, Lily, Will, and Rich attempting to get visual proof of these entities to prove Ronnie's dad's innocence. So again, you've got a lot going on, much like episode 2, but I found my enjoyment mostly in seeing more of Dick's backstory being uncovered and just his abilities as well. I'm very interested to see where this is going to go in terms of how they're going to find the entity, what it's going to look like, how are they going to tackle the visual of the entity, because it's so subjective when it comes to what this thing is all about. And for the most part, we know it as Pennywise the Dancing Clown, and we get the littlest glimpse of Pennywise in this episode. It's literally his eyes, and then at the very end, it's sort of like a somewhat bit of a glimpse, but a kind of artistic glimpse. So I think the thing at the moment is the episodes haven't really wowed me, with the exception of episode 1 with the beginning and the end. At this point, I just feel like it's jumping back and forth, which, is intentional. We've got all these different things going on that are going to somewhat come together, I'm assuming. But seeing these worlds collide with the character of Dick Hallorann coming into the picture, and them utilizing his special techniques, special powers, special gifts to help find something else from another universe. As much of a drag the series has been in certain points, I definitely think this is my favorite so far, and it really had nothing to do with the kids. Again, the things that happen at the end in the graveyard where the kids are trying to get photos of the entities to prove Ronnie's dad's innocence with what happened in the cinema back in episode 1. Again, it kind of came off as, are you afraid of the dark, goosebump stuff. It didn't really terrify me or scare me. There was a flashback sequence that took place at the beginning of this episode in 1908 with a young bloke being chased by a creepy old man entity in the forest. That was fucking freaky, and that was in broad daylight. Whereas this end sequence that takes place in the graveyard take place at night, and again, it definitely showcases that TV budget and almost kind of reminded me visually of Ghostbusters Afterlife or Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, kind of not wacky or goofy looking entities and spirits, but sort of in that realm, I guess you could say. So Giovanna Debdo, who plays Leroy Hanlon, and then Chris Chalk, who plays Dick Hallorann, I think they have great chemistry. Obviously, one knows more than the other, and the one that doesn't know as much knows what's up. But he's trying to just figure things out without asking the question, yo, Dick, like, what the fuck is going on? And even though there is a nice little exchange out on Leroy's porch where Dick's trying to explain in the best way possible without giving too much away what he's all about and what goes on in his mind. I definitely want things to start ramping up now, and I want answers in terms of what's going on the base, and then with Dick, and then Leroy, and then how they're going to tackle finding the entity and what their plans of it are. Because again, that story beat of possibly trying to weaponize it as a mind control device, like, as weird as that sounds, I'm kind of all for it, but then also you can't lose that charm of what makes it. And we haven't really seen it yet. So that's where at this point, I think I'm just getting a bit antsy. I'm like, okay, now I just want things to be a bit more Pennywise-esque. You've had that slow burn. You've teased him as much as you can. We know he's brewing. We know he's coming. Now I want him to fuck shit up, essentially. And I know that can sound very bare basic, very bro-like, but now I want to see the clown. And we do get a good little glimpse of him somewhat at the end of this episode. And with that, I'm going to be giving it Welcome to Derry, episode 3. Now you see it, 3.5 out of 5. So with that being said, guys, drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts on episode 3, Now You See It, of It Welcome to Derry. Tonight, I got the premiere of The Running Man with Glenn Powell, so I'm very excited for that. So expect a review either later tonight or early tomorrow morning. Love you guts, and I'll catch you in the next one.